Welcome everybody to the May 2nd, 2022 workshop meeting of Plymouth Council. If everyone would please stand, we'll do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Our first presentation of the evening is concerning our second bond issue. We have a presentation by PFM Financial Associates.
Hi everybody, Ben Kappenstein, PFM Financial.
And if you could just move to the little green light there, because
Yeah,
everything's being recorded. Thank you.
Great, okay. Ben Kappenstein, PFM Financial Advisors. Good to see everybody again. Here tonight to talk about the second borrowing for the big project that the township's been working on for a while. Have a presentation here. It looks bigger than it actually is. A lot of this stuff is just kind of information for your reading later on. But I'm going to tick through a couple pages and hopefully answer any questions that anybody has. So we can start with a market update on page 2. So there's a couple charts here. This top chart is interest rates back from 1982 until present, so pretty long term. The point of this chart is to show that we're still in a relatively low interest rate environment. So if you look at the little box on the right-hand side, oh, missing a couple?
Yes, thank you.
So the top chart just shows that from 1982, back then, interest rates were at 11%. Okay, this is a 10-year benchmark rate that we're looking at. And now we're down on that little right-hand square right there on the right-hand side. So we're in a relatively low interest rate environment. However, I'm sure you've been hearing that interest rates are going up. So recently, if you skip down to this bottom chart, you can see on the right-hand side that quick tick up in interest rates. So that's been caused by inflation and the Federal Reserve raising short-term interest rates in order to combat that inflation. So right now, the Fed is expected to keep raising rates, and everything is pointing to interest rates steadily increasing to combat that inflation until that's under control. So that's kind of where the market's at right now. Still in a relatively good borrowing environment, but interest rates have risen. So if you go to page 3, that's where we kind of start talking about the topics for today. Some new developments from the Township Administration. So back in May of last year, we borrowed about $9.7 million of a planned 2-step borrowing. Recently, we found out that the projects have increased in amount from about $15 million up to $22 million. Unfortunately, it's a pretty common theme across Pennsylvania, and I'm sure across the nation right now. Inflation's just causing the prices of these raw materials to increase. Similar situation here that we understand from Karen. So in order to borrow for that second step, we only have 9.7 so far. We have to figure out how the rest of it's going to be funded. So there's a couple ways, a couple options that we list on how to do that. Option 1 is to borrow everything. So the full amount that you need, which is about $12.3 million. So we could go out, we could borrow that. It would be done on a non-bank qualified basis. If you remember, bank qualified and non-bank qualified, $10 million is the mark. If you go over $10 million in the calendar year, you get higher interest rates called non-bank qualified rates. If you're under $10 million, it's bank qualified rates, a little bit better rates, a shorter prepayment provision. Does everybody kind of remember the BQ stuff that we've talked about in the past? I know there's some new faces here. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So that's option 1, borrow it all, 12.3 above that 10 million, a little bit higher interest rates, longer prepayment term, or option 2 is going to be a bank qualified borrowing. So we keep it under 10 million, we get the lower rates, we get the shorter prepayment, and then the township would come up with cash to fund the rest of the project. So we need about $2.5 million of cash in order to make it all work. So that's the 2 options that we laid out. There's no questions tonight that have to be answered. We're just kind of giving you this information to think about. And we're going to talk about timing here next, which is when do we borrow this second step? So right now, we understand the township still has a good amount of money in the bank from the first borrowing, right? About $8 million, something like that. So the township hasn't used that first borrowing yet. So we're not recommending that you go out and borrow right now. You might think that interest rates are going up. Maybe we should get ahead of it. That is something you could consider, but the fact that you haven't spent all those funds yet we don't want to go out and borrow more money and start incurring interest on that money that you're going to have to pay back. And that'll come back to higher rates that you might get later on. It's really a question of when you need the money. And right now we're working on getting a draw schedule, which is when they're going to use the funds from the architect. Once we get that, we'll have a better handle on when you guys should borrow. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay. The next page is just a summary of your existing debt. So this is not anything new. This is just the one issue that we took out last year. So that's the GO bond series of 21, and you can see that the payments are about $475,000 per year. If you go to page 5, now we're going to look at the colorful page that has the new borrowing options on it. The first thing you'll see on the left-hand side of page 5 is step 1 final. That's the one you just looked at. We've already done that. It netted $9.7 million. It's 30 years. It's a level structure, so level annual payments. And you can see the payments in column 8 down there. So then if you look at step 2, option 1, which is borrow the full amount. Go out and take down the whole $12.3 million. Again, it would be non-bank qualified, rates a little bit higher. The call date or the prepayment date is out in 31, so it's a little bit longer than we're going to see in option 2. And then if you look down in column 9, the new payments that would be associated with that are about $780,000 per year. So if you add up column 8 and column 9, you get to column 10, which would be the option 1 ending debt service, about $1.25 million. So that's the amount that Karen and Kellen would budget every year, and that would have to be covered via tax increases or somewhere else in the budget. So 1.25. Then if you go over to option 2, that's the red there. So here, you would use about $2.5 million of cash. You get it bank qualified, a little bit lower interest rates, shorter call feature. Now you're in 27 instead of 31. And then column 11, the payments are going to be less because you're borrowing less. So now they're about $590,000. If you add those up, you go to column 12, and now you're just over $1 million in the budget, everything all in. So that's kind of the two options. The township has a good cash balance. I think the question will be, does it feel comfortable using that cash balance to pay some of these projects? How does that affect credit rating, other things? That's all to be determined, I think. But if the township's comfortable, this is what it would look like using some of that cash. Any questions on either of those options?
What is the difference in interest rate?
Good question.
I see the difference in what we would pay each year, but
good question.
Right.
It varies every day depending on the market. Right now, we're seeing 20 to 25 basis points of difference, which is a decent amount. That's tens of thousands of dollars in a borrowing like this. So it's a decent amount, plus the shorter prepayment provision, which is very important. It gives you more flexibility. In option 1 here, you can't touch those bonds until 31. So if you would need to restructure or refinance it, you can't touch it until 2031. In step 2, you would get that shorter, that 5-year call, which is what you got on the first deal last year. It would be very similar to that. The downside is you got to use cash.
It was like, what, 2.5 million?
About 2.5.
Come up with.
Now, the one... What's that?
Or get a bank loan.
Or we could go out and get another bank loan. The other thing I wanted to mention, a lot of that 12.3, 2 million, close to 2 million, maybe a little less, is contingency. So something that you might not use. And that was kind of the thought when we were talking to Karen. She thought about 2 million of it was contingency. If that contingency doesn't hit, you wouldn't even have to fund that in cash, the rest of it. The bond issue would be enough.
We're going to use some of it.
Some of it, right.
Some of it is it's change order money, basically, and we had our first change order today. So we're only on
there you go. You're starting
the beginning
off
of week 3. But we do need some of it, but maybe not all of it. But it would also be better, I think we discussed, to not to overborrow.
Yes.
Right, to borrow a little bit less and use some cash or get a bank loan than to overborrow, because we don't want to have that extra debt. We don't want to overborrow.
So in option 1, you borrow 12.3. It turns out you don't need the whole 12.3. You need 11. Now you have 1.3 million. What do you do with it? It's not the end of the world. You can use it on other township stuff. We'd have to broaden the scope of the borrowing so you could do that. But you don't want to overborrow. We want to keep you away from overborrowing. So option 2 really gives you a little more flexibility with that. Maybe you only end up coming up with $500,000 or $1 million and not the whole 2.5. I think that would be best case scenario, and that would make everybody happy. But that's kind of the question. And again, it doesn't need answered right now. But when we go to borrow this money, we'll want to know, are we doing the $12.3 million deal, or are we going to do the one and keep it under $10 million eventually? And again, timing, we don't really know yet. I think that draw schedule that we're going to get from the architect is really going to tell us when you need that money. I have a feeling it's going to be later this year, just by the way you're talking, Karen, that you'll need it probably, later on, close to the end of the year, something like
They told
that.
us it's generally a bell curve.
Yeah.
In the middle of the project, we're going to need the most, a little at the beginning, a little
Yeah.
at the end, but, it's going to be a bell curve.
So you got the $8 million in the bank right now to use. That'll get you a good way,
Halfway up.
right, halfway up. But by the end of the year, if I had to guess, just based on the completion, was next year sometime.
Next June, I think.
Next June. So you'll probably need it by the end of this year. So that would probably be the case, but we want to see that draw schedule before we give you some guidance on that.
So I'm sorry,
Yes.
are you projecting that the funding would have to be available by the end of the year, or we'd have to make a decision by the end of the year? We'd have to make a decision
Sooner.
fairly soon
Yes.
to have the funding available by the end of the year.
Takes 3 to
So
4 months.
yeah, it takes 3 to 4 months to
Okay.
do the borrowing process. So if you wanted it by November, 3 months before is probably good. We will have to do a new borrowing ordinance. So there had been one in place before that was going to take care of both steps. Unfortunately, because the amount increased, we're going to have to do a new ordinance. It's not a big deal. It's just your bond counsel will have to come and do a new ordinance. And that's all part of the process that we'll lay out for you. But good point. Yes, it has to be a 3 month, 4 to be a little more conservative, but 3 months really to borrow.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of time, but not a lot of time to actually make a decision. Yeah.
Yes. Unless it would say that you wouldn't need it till next year, which I don't think it's going
No,
to
I
say.
think that's it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah. Good questions. Any other questions on the numbers?
I followed everything, thank you.
Yeah. Good. We put some other stuff in here. I won't go over it. The credit rating report that we got last year, you guys have a really good credit rating. There's some really good stuff in here about the township. They go through the positives, the negatives, all that kind of stuff. So we like to include it just as a good read for board members. So that's in there. And then the back couple pages are just back up to that colorful summary page that I just showed you. So they'll tie in directly to that. But tonight, again, no decision needs to be made. I think in the near future, a decision will have to be made, the next couple months or so. And hopefully we'll get that draw schedule in the near future, and that'll really help solve it of when it's a good time to go out and borrow.
right, and do we need to go back to Harrisburg again?
Yes. So the ordinance will get filed. It'll get filed again with the state. We'll go through all that stuff again. Yeah.
The ordinance was 18 million, but it doesn't go up to 22 million.
Yeah.
So, as far as the time to make a decision, what would you say we should make a decision by which month?
I would say a month or
Yeah,
a month or 2 at the most.
Again, I'm basing
Okay.
it a lot on that
That'll
draw
put you in
schedule, but
July,
July at the latest.
and-
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I would say maybe by next month.
yeah,
Okay.
but we're getting in. It's really going fast this year, actually. So when you think about it, I guess
Okay.
you have a month or two to make the decision on which way you want to go.
Just not tonight.
And we'll get everything prepped and ready to go. We're gonna have to go back to the credit rating agency. We'll do the credit rating again. We'll put together a preliminary official statement, which is the big thing that has all the information for the investors. So we'll take care of all that process for you and get everything ready to go. And then when you guys make a decision, we'll be able to hit go and get rolling. The other thing that we didn't put in here is Underwriter. I think last time we did an RFP for it, so we would want to have a selection of either you want to do another RFP and go out, look at a bunch of different underwriters, or you could pick one, or you could do competitive. There's a couple different ways you could do that. I figured because you did it last time, you'd probably want to do the RFP again, but it's completely up to you. So.
Yeah, so can you start all those things, all the background stuff now?
Yes, we can.
Because we have to do it. There's no
Yes.
option.
Yep.
So, you get all that.
We'll get all that started.
Yes.
Think about the underwriter stuff and what you want to do. You could go with the one that you went with last time, which was Janney Montgomery Scott. They did a great job pricing the bonds, but again, that's completely your decision. So we'll look to you for that decision. We'll get everything else started and ready to go. And then, just think about the cash and what you want to do with that. Does it make sense to use the cash? Do you want to borrow the full amount? It's completely up to you guys. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
All
Okay,
right, thank
thank
you
you.
very
Good to
much.
see everybody.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation is by Keystone Property Group regarding 502 Germantown Pike.
Karen, are we able to work the projector or not?
No,
No?
there is no projector.
No projector
Sorry,
here.
I didn't know you needed one.
Okay,
But no projector.
okay.
This is our temporary meeting room. Our regular meeting room and our new meeting room will really be nice for everybody.
Okay,
But yeah.
okay.
it'll be
No,
good.
no worries.
Yeah, I didn't know you needed.
That's okay. I brought some extra copies to hand out. There's nothing new. My name's Rob Gunlock. I'm the attorney for Keystone Property Group. Let me introduce who's here with me tonight. Rich Gottlieb and Jen Rosenberg. Jen's over here. Rich is right there. Also, we have the land planner for the project who has helped with some land planning and fiscal analysis that we're going to share with you again tonight. David Babbitt is here. Civil engineer is John Olejnikoff from Bowler Engineering. John's in the middle. And Matt Hammond from Traffic Planning Design, the traffic engineer. The reason that we've assembled such a large team is because there's been some questions on this proposed redevelopment project over the last going on 12 months now, and we've accumulated additional consultants and additional reports that we've submitted to the township. So by way of background, we're here tonight to talk about the office building at the Plymouth Meeting Mall. It's identified technically by address of 502 West Germantown Pike, but it's in the middle of the mall. It's been vacant now for more than 5 years. Keystone attempted to redevelop it for office purposes. Didn't take. They've attempted to redevelop it for age restricted. It didn't take. I think it's now been more than 5 years, Rich? Yeah. Going on 6, 7 years. And it sits there vacant, and if anyone drives around that building at night, as I did last night to check it out, it's very depressing in the back there. It's dark. There's not a lot of activity. I think last night the restaurant might have had 20 cars, the movie theater might have 30 cars, and the Boscoff was closed. And so we're looking to redevelop that whole section of the mall and help the mall through these redeveloping the office building for apartments to jumpstart the mall, because you're going to put people there who are going to, some are going to work at home under the new post-COVID world, some are going to commute, and many of whom will shop and dine and go to the movies within walking distance of the apartments. And so we think it's a win-win from a redevelopment standpoint. It's taking an existing asset and we're approving it. We did a presentation to the board about, I think it was back in September, October, at least one presentation, maybe twice we were there, presenting some additional information. Matt Heyman had done some preliminary traffic that one of the council members had asked for. He's not longer here, but the reports are here for everybody to see. And John did some analysis on the stormwater, and we're going to create some additional pervious areas and help the stormwater situation out there by this project as we get further along into it. And David Babbitt did a fiscal study to show the net increase that if this building is converted to apartments, there will be a net increase in fiscal. Let me just hand out to you some of the renderings here so that we can just, I can walk everybody through them.
Thank you.
I think you've seen this in one form or another before. They've been around for a year now. Whoops. That won't happen at the new building.
Sorry.
Let's see. 2 extras. Anybody else want one? There you go.
One for
Anybody
our
else?
chair, I guess.
The chair.
The
He's
chair
coming?
will be coming,
Okay.
Mr. Monero.
Okay, good.
He's at on his way from a baseball game.
So what I thought I would do is just give a quick summary of some of the facts for you that are just in the first couple pages of the outline, walk through the exhibits, and then I'm going to let you open it up to any questions from any of the consultants here on the fiscal, on the projected school-age children, projected occupants, which Mr. Babbitt did, traffic from Mr. Hammond, Rich or Jen here from the proposed plans for developing the property. But I just outlined in the beginning of this outline just the facts. The property is zoned shopping center, and we are proposing to redevelop it for up to 150 units. There will not be more than 150. The current configuration has it around 140, 142, but we're still working on the final design. There would be amenities like you see with any of the modern, what I'll call professional office buildings. These buildings tend to have smaller units. If you see the one that Western just built in Ballackinwood, for instance, in Lower Merion, they're smaller units. They're 1 and 2 bedroom units, but there's a lot of common amenities, a lot of common areas throughout the project, and this would be similar to that. We've proposed a text amendment that we've reviewed with the township staff that would allow the redevelopment of existing office buildings into apartments under certain limited conditions. You have to be in the SC zoning district. You have to have an apartment building that can be converted to apartments. There's a density cap in any project of 150 units in any high-rise apartment building and 50 units in any low-rise apartment building. There has to be a minimum type of amenity space. There can only be 1 and 2 bedroom units, and there's a cap of 50% on the 2 bedroom units, where there has to be a production of traffic and fiscal and sewer studies, and there has to be a hearing, a conditional use hearing, in which council can impose conditions on the approval of the use. We think that the reports we've submitted clearly show that the traffic will be significantly less by converting this building to apartments than if it was reopened for office. We're not kidding you. We can't reopen it for office tomorrow because we don't have an office tenant that would lease it, but if it did, it would generate significantly more parking. Matt Hammond took a look at that as well as the parking situation. He has determined there's plenty of parking out there. In fact, the apartments would generate less parking demands than the office would generate. The fiscal reports we submitted show a net positive. That is, if you compare apartments to the office, that there is a net positive fiscal to the township and to the school district. And as part of those reports, the projection, looking at this a number of different ways through the reports we've submitted to the township, project 11 school-aged children, with 9 of whom would go to public school. As far as environmental, there'd be no further adverse impacts. The site's already developed, but we will improve it with some additional pervious areas, and likely your township engineer requests for any redevelopment under a provision that John pointed out in the ordinance, that your township engineer points to the applicants to do something better to improve the stormwater situation even when you're redeveloping a property, and John's aware that's going to be requested here and would certainly implement that. As far as attachments go, just to refresh your memory, the first attachment there is just an overall site plan of the mall showing where the office building is located. The next 2 items we gave you is just some historic look at the building when we looked at converting it for one of the age-restricted with the entrance to the east, what I call the rear, facing Benihana, and the building redevelopment that we showed with that proposed layout. I think it says Sage in the bottom right corner because they were looking at it for that purpose. We've also included a new site plan that Bowler put together, looking at potentially flipping the entrance and putting it behind the market there with a more prominent entrance than the rear, but still having the rear for visitor access with key fobs, but putting the more contained entrance for visitors, flipping it on the other side.
Is that where the church at the mall is? That
Yes,
entrance?
that side there, where the entrance is that goes into the mall. That's what we are looking at in the new layout. And then we just included a series of very preliminary renderings for you just to get a flavor of how this would lay out. You'll see some layout plans that show that potential access point to where the mall entrance is in the front there, with a dog park, with some outside seating area to bring some nighttime life to the project around it. And then there's just a series of examples as to how these apartments lay out. Certainly a possibility for a small swimming pool to the rear between the building and Legoland there, where there's a 1-story structure now. We've included an updated rendering for a different look and feel for the building. That's in the package. Again, these are all very preliminary. We've included then behind it the reports that we previously submitted to the township with the traffic and the fiscal and the updated draft text amendment. So what we're here for tonight, this is not a obviously formal hearing. We're a work session. It's very preliminary. we're here to ask you to authorize the advertisement of the text amendment so that we can have a hearing, so that we can advertise the formal hearing, and we can bring the consultants to provide testimony in a more formal atmosphere, at which time the board certainly would be able to then make a decision on whether they want to proceed forward with this text amendment or not to proceed forward with the text amendment. This is a great opportunity, and why we brought all the consultants here to have them available for any questions you may have regarding the layout, the type of project, the traffic, the fiscal, the engineering, anything related to the project. Fair game, we're here and available to answer any questions you have, but we really would appreciate your support to move the process forward so that we can take a vacant asset and redevelop it and hopefully kickstart the rest of the mall and some other development that the mall owners are doing. We don't own the mall. We own the office building. That's all we have, but certainly we feel that there's an opportunity there to create some energy with a new apartment development in the building and help the mall, and the mall help us lease apartments by having what they have there. So people can shop at the market without having to get into their car, and it helps us market these units. We feel good it's the right market and the right location to do so, and I think, Rich, you're excited about the redevelopment plan here, right? We're going to jump in and give them a little bit of overview about your company, what you do, and why you feel comfortable that you can pull this off.
Right. So Keystone Property Group, we're over 30 years old.
Can you just make sure that the
sorry.
microphone can pick you up? Thank you. We have to report our public hearings. Thank you.
Keystone, so I'm Rich Gottlieb, I'm president of Keystone. Keystone, we've actually now Keystone Development Investments, but the same company. It's a tiny little different name. But we've been a company that's redeveloped buildings in the area, many of them. Mostly office, and we now doing more mixed use. We're a mixed use developer now, and we feel this is a mixed use environment. It would really work well. We've tried hard, as Rob said, and I just we could not find a lead tenant for the office building. It needs a lot of work, as you know, and it needs a makeover, to say the least. And we're prepared to do that. And these are the environments people are looking for today. This live, work, play, and the location is, as we all know, is great. You got all the highway access. You got buses that actually come here. We got restaurants. We got a movie theater. We got a lot to do, and you don't have to leave. So.
Rich, you just finished a project working with Conshohocken Borough on a redevelopment and new development there,
right?
Creating a town square and an office building and a hotel right downtown in Conshohocken Borough, right?
Right. So we're really excited about that. We're almost done. We're so close. But the hotel will be open in September, and that will complete the whole project. And it's really, we're getting nothing but accolades for it. The town's happy. We're happy. The tenants are happy, and we're expecting the hotel to do very well too, as well as the office building there. We're got some retail tenants coming in, and really created a nice kind of center of gravity for Conshohocken, which really didn't have it the modern way.
This is the development at the bridge, right?
Yeah,
Right,
the Amerisource Bergen building.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a question about the text amendment. Is this something that y'all drafted?
Yes, we did.
So
We did a draft. We've submitted it to the township. We received some feedback. There's been a couple different revisions to it.
okay, I have a question about Article 21, Section D, shopping center density, a maximum of 600 apartment units.
Yes.
You're looking for 150. Why are you proposing a text amendment that would allow for 600?
Okay. Good question. We have advised in the submission that number is obviously subject to whatever number council feels appropriate. But it was questioned whether or not our density should be calculated based upon the land we own or the entire mall. We can't calculate the permitted density in our project based upon using somebody else's land. So we have to calculate the density using our land. We have about 5 acres, And so that would allow 30 units per acre times 5 is 150. The concern was expressed then that they didn't want the entire mall to be able to be redeveloped for apartments at 30 units per acre. And so I shared with your solicitor a recent ordinance that Upper Dublin passed where they capped the number of apartment units in a specific district. In Upper Dublin's case, they were redeveloping the Fort Washington business district or industrial park. I forget which one they call it. And so they said, look, we're going to redevelop this area because we want live work, but we don't want it to turn into all live. And so we're going to cap the number of units at 600 within the district. That number was just thrown in there as a placeholder. As I communicated in the letter, you can cap it at 150 for now to start out, and then you can amend it whenever you want. If you decide that you want to amend it to increase it to 350 because there's another project that's 200 units and you think that would be good for the district, you could amend the district. We're only asking for 150, that we be allowed to build up to 150 within this project. That's our cap.
But then allowing 600 allows somebody else to come in and take 600 minus 150.
Correct. We're proposing we would change that to 150 or whatever number you deem appropriate. So we're fine with 150 in place there, and it be advertised at 150. And if at a later date you decide you want to increase it, that's totally within the discretion of council.
So do we not really need Section D, Alex?
Well, I believe we're still discussing, that's a decision of council of the number that they ultimately would like to go in if council is inclined to move forward with eventually authorizing a hearing on this ordinance. But I believe Karen is still waiting to hear back from Ken Amy, who's been out of the office the last few weeks for further comment and review.
Yeah, well, this is the first time we're seeing this
Yes.
tonight with the 600.
Yeah, and I
And the
just looked at it
150
real
cap.
quickly, and the number 600 jumped out at me, so I haven't really had a chance to read.
Yeah, that
everything.
protects you because that paragraph protects you, whether you want that at 150 or 600 or the other number, because that way the rest of the site can't be redeveloped at 30 units per acre. There's a cap in the total number within the district, and the Planning Commission in the county has reviewed it and blessed that concept in Upper Dublin Township, and we shared with you that ordinance amendment that they recently adopted. So it's something that is custom and practice now and has been blessed by the county planning agency.
Okay,
And it's the
whatever.
number that I'm sure council would want to discuss, and I know obviously Mr. Monero is not here
Right.
this evening, but I'm sure he's been pretty vocal in discussions and would like to some say before council decides to make a decision on that.
In fact, when Upper Dublin passed it, they said, we're going to set it this and we can always amend it to increase it later. So I think that's something that you would all need to give input to staff, and whether it's 150, whether it's 250, whether it's 600, whether it's any other number you want, it doesn't make a difference to us as long as we're being fully transparent. We're not looking to do any more than 150 within that building.
We would want Ken Amy to review it again, because this is another revision tonight.
Okay, and so, shopping center density. The shopping center district, Karen, what all does it encompass right now? All of those restaurants and the old IKEA
Office
and, of course, the mall,
The movie theater, you mean
the
how much of
movie
this area
theater,
is-
the
yeah.
Keystone building, that is the Plymouth Mall shopping center, that whole,
That shopping center district, I think, goes all the way up to Hickory Road, so you've got the
Those
old
outlying
TD Bank,
buildings.
you know, the other, I guess Corman has their offices
Yeah,
there in Plymouth
right.
Plaza. There's some other, that district goes up to Hickory Road.
So it's all of
Okay.
those tax parcels.
Yes, there's several parcels in there.
Yeah,
There's this one, and even within what Preet owns, there's several parcels.
right.
So
Alright.
we've also proposed there's some setbacks. You can't have one building within X number of feet of another building that we have Situate in there as
I
well.
see that, yeah.
And there's setbacks of 100 feet from the boundary line, so it can't be right up on the roads or right along the property line. So there's some other provisions that really narrow and limit where they could go. And most important, it's the definition of those buildings are only permitted when an existing building previously or currently used for office purpose is being converted into mid-rise or high-rise apartments, and it's authorized as a conditional use. So it is very limiting, together with the 100-foot setbacks, the spacing between buildings, the cap of the number of units within any one building. You put that all together with a cap on the whole district, it really limits what could be built and is within council's control.
Thank
The
you.
one thing with the parking, the 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit,
Yeah.
doesn't the movie theater share parking spaces with that? So has that been taken into consideration too?
Yes, it has. John did a very complicated analysis with the chart in there that he's used previously, John, where you've calculated it for the entire mall property, correct?
Yes, there's a shared parking agreement for the mall, so really all the spaces you see across the entirety of the mall, they're all counted as one big pool. So there are parking spaces associated with the existing office building. So what we would be generating from this proposed development would actually be less than what is accounted for at that office building currently.
So would there be restricted parking, or does it always have to be open to the people who want to go to Legoland and Boscov's? Or
Open.
It's all open,
It's all
first
open,
come,
so
first
Yeah.
served.
I know when there
residents
was
aren't
a-
guaranteed.
when there was
Yeah,
urgent
it's-
care there, they,
They did, but it was very artfully worded when the urgent care was there.
Yeah.
It said something like intended for. It never said reserved for. It said
Ah.
intended for.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's some restrictions.
I walked in the rain a couple of times. Okay.
So it's difficult. Malls have a lot of leases. They have a lot of restrictions in them,
Yeah.
and we have to abide by them as well, type of thing. So,
But Matt
I'd
did-
like to have a separate area, frankly, for parking.
Sure.
But it's probably not going to work.
But Matt did do an analysis on the parking and is very comfortable that there's more than enough parking for the 150 maximum units,
Well,
particularly
just how
when-
close.
Yeah.
If you come up from work, you don't feel like being all the way over at Boscov's to
Yeah.
the very end.
Well, we have two doors. We have doors on both sides, so you'll have a key fob
Right.
to get into the
Right.
one side. But that's where the larger parking area is there behind the
Exactly.
building and where that is. But there's
Actually, the south side of the building, between the building and the AMC Theater,
Yeah.
is really the last spaces to get filled up, and that's because we actually were officed in there for a little over 6 months or a year, a couple years back, and that's where everybody that's where we would tend to park on that south side there, facing the AMC.
It looks like from some of the renderings that there's some nice, like some very pleasant outdoor space, like patio space. Is the intention for that it's public? Meaning someone could, come out of the mall with a cup of coffee and sit down, or is it resident use only?
But it's intended for the residents, I mean, to be candid, but it's
Yeah.
really public. It's not, there's no fence around
Yeah,
it,
so it's-
other than the dog area, which you have to have today, that they run, which would be fenced, but even that, someone could
Yeah.
go in.
But we had said, if this did move forward, we would run through a land development and we would certainly look at the pedestrian access. We did submit a letter looking at some pedestrian connectivity, but certainly putting some benches out there along those routes is something that we're open and amenable to.
And are you envisioning anything commercial inside the building you're creating? Like, is there a Starbucks in the lobby that somebody's going to roam into, or other things that people might find?
So very early on, we were actually, instructed, it wasn't really something that was looked for, and so we've never planned for that at all. Now, for the residents, there'll be a coffee area, but that would be pretty much
So
exclusive.
there'll be no third-party lease. We're not going to do a Starbucks lease in there and compete with the mall for the Starbucks. It's just for amenities for the
Right.
residents.
If you want that, the Whole Foods would probably be a great location for that breakfast,
Yeah.
which it is.
Yeah.
And where do you envision, the traffic coming and going from, strictly onto Germantown Pike, onto Hickory, both? How would you assume people would be sort of routed in and out from?
Matt, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I can get the professional.
See, we're finding a way to include everybody tonight.
Yes, that's
I
nice.
appreciate
Darren.
that, thank you. Again, I'm Matt Hammond with Traffic Planning Design. As far as where we anticipate the traffic coming from and going to, it'd be essentially utilizing the existing access points. Obviously, if we're able to move forward and schedule a hearing and get through to land development, we would do all the studies that Rob talked about, the traffic study and things of that nature. But I would anticipate that we would utilize the existing access points. And one thing that I would point out is that when you look at the traffic associated with the existing office building, assume that Rich was able to find someone to occupy that building would generate about twice as much traffic as would the apartments. So we could come in tomorrow and obviously re-tenant the building with an office user, and that would be it. But obviously, we're able to reduce the traffic by half by making these 150 apartment units. So there'll be a less of an impact on those driveways. And also, as was previously mentioned, less of an impact from a parking perspective as well. Welcome.
And Karen, we can't forget Mr. Babbitt over here. We're going to put a cap on his time, but there were questions at the last time regarding the occupancy. How many school-age children are projected for this type of hotel building? And I think that came out of a staff meeting, Karen, you had, and projected occupancy apartment building. And so what we wanted to do was we asked Mr. Babbitt to do a deeper dive. Most people just use the Rutgers study or a few regional national publications. David actually went out and got data from Plymouth School District, Lower Merion School District, and looked at apartment buildings, and we submitted to you a study that he did looking at the newer buildings and the older buildings. This is a big distinction between older apartment buildings that have 3 bedrooms that are more family-oriented than these younger professional design buildings like we're proposing here in Western Built in Bala, and what he found. So David, why don't you in the recent letter give them an overview of what you found, because I know that was a hot topic.
Good evening, everyone. I get this question a lot. I do a lot of fiscal impact analysis. Everyone says, oh, my brother-in-law has 6 kids, he lives in an apartment, and to top it all off, he's a deadbeat, so you're not going to get any revenue from him. But, I would say it's time to get a new brother-in-law. I contacted the Colonial School District, asked them what is the current number of students, public school students from, it turns out to be nearly 1,500 units in existing apartment buildings in the township. Courts at Spring Mill, not the township, the school district. That's in White Marsh. Riverwalk Apartments and Lumina are both in Conshohocken, and Park is right around the corner here. Almost 1,500 units, 13 public school kids. It's 0.009 public school kids per unit. Effectively, it's a rounding error. The school district population fluctuates by a handful of kids every week almost. It's really nothing to be worried about, and that's almost 1,500 units, not 150 that we're talking about. A recent study done in Lower Merion, also obviously a very strong school district, very appealing to people, had 67 school kids out of 837 units, 0.06 per unit. It's really quite amazing. I added them all up together. One's from the Marple Newtown, Westchester area, Great Valley, where I'm from. Almost 4,000 units, 178 kids. 0.046 public school kids per unit. It's really not an issue. It's a canard, really. It's a belief that is just not founded in reality. The old apartments, I also asked the Colonial School District, the one right next to here, what's it called?
Place One or
Place
Plymouth
One,
Hill?
or the Plymouth Hill, whatever it's called. That had a large number. It says 3-bedroom units.
Sussex Square, they fill the school bus at Sussex Square. Kids, right?
Yeah.
Sussex Square.
Is that an older garden apartment complex?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, not
It-
Place One.
There's a significant difference between the demographics of these older units and the newer units. It really is that simple. Newer units are appealing to empty nesters and to young professionals without kids. And the other thing to keep in mind is that people who are moving into these units, this is not the lower-end district. These people have choices. If they have kids, they're not going to, spend $2,000, $2,500 a month to move into a 1-bedroom apartment and have juniors sleeping on a daybed in the living room. They're going to find another alternative housing source for themselves that works better for them, and they can afford to do so. $2,500 is more than my mortgage for a 4-bedroom, single-family home that was built in 1969. They're just going to choose something other than a 1- or 2-bedroom apartment. It really is that simple. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. The bottom line here is that the project does look good for the township. It looks very good for the school district, even with a handful of kids. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I know we're hitting you with a lot of data, but we have all this in reports.
That's
Go
why I
ahead.
just want to, we did agree that we're only looking to do 1- and 2-bedroom units, so.
And that estimated rent is consistent with what was said, somewhere in that 2,000 to 2,500 range.
Yes.
And I
If
just
we can
want,
get more, we will try.
I just need to point out the fact that we would need to send this ordinance back to our planner, Ken Amy, because that we looked up the zoning map, the district, the shopping center district, not only includes the mall, like I said, up to Hickory, Germantown, but all the way down to Plymouth Road and the Turnpike are the boundaries. So you have the big maintenance area from the Turnpike that's vacant as well, and the corner mattress store and the gas station. That's all in the shopping center district. So whatever we do for the zoning district would include those lands as well.
So
we
that
have
would
to
be
have 10.
eligible for that kind of.
But there is the
apartment.
setback,
Yeah.
there's the 100-foot setback
Yeah,
to
there's
be
setbacks
eligible.
and things
Yep.
like that.
Right.
But that's why we would have Ken look at
Right.
in its
So
entirety.
Luke Oil and the mattress
Store, if they ever wanted to
Store.
sell to
Yeah, that's
a,
what we're talking about.
an apartment complex,
Apartment
they
place.
could,
And then the state owns that.
yes. I
that
think
area.
What's on the first floor of the building? I saw sketches for the 2nd through 7th and 8th and 9th.
I think
Oh.
there was a first floor too, but
Yeah.
so the first will be some units, a couple of units, but mostly.
Apartment units on the first
Yeah,
floor.
yeah, it's people who take elevators, and but what we're really looking for is most of the common amenities. So, this co-working area, gathering area,
Okay.
those type of things. Probably a golf simulator if we can find.
Yeah.
Fitness, there's fitness, the reception,
Of course, the
cafe.
fitness.
yeah.
There'll be a bike. There's always got to be a bike room now. Of
Yeah.
course, and the
Dog
sales.
park, I saw
Can
that.
I ask the traffic engineer on a question?
Sure.
You talk about people coming and going. What internal improvements do you envision as far as once we're in here or people that are going to use the mall for other purposes? What internal improvements do you envision as far as driveway alignment and things like that?
Sure, great questions. We actually had prepared a kind of a preliminary look at the area surrounding the building from not only a vehicular standpoint, but also a pedestrian standpoint. And if you're familiar, obviously, with the mall in that area, there's some crosswalks here and there, there's some striping, there's a lot of different pavements, that type of thing. A lot of
several
that-
stop signs.
Correct, and a lot of stop bars without stop signs. It says stop in the road, but it doesn't have any other visual indication to stop. A lot of those markings are faded. A lot of those crosswalks are not in the spot that I would put them in if I was wiping the slate clean. There's no ADA ramps. There's really no compliancy in that area with respect to pedestrians more so. So one of the things that we talked about in our letter specifically related to pedestrian improvements, connecting to the sidewalks being proposed around the building, connecting to the areas of the parking lots that would likely be most utilized, not only for the apartment building, but also to and from the mall, as well as some vehicular changes. I would say that at this point, we're not proposing anything significant as far as the existing parking lot is concerned.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. What vehicular changes have you thought about or envisioned?
Well, I think one of the changes that we looked at was a drop-off area associated with the apartment building, which would be on the west side of the building, to allow for an area for people to drop off or pick up in that area. And also, I believe on the east side, there was a small area for like a loading type area. But I don't know that we have control over a lot of the other parking areas. What we would do, though, is obviously restripe through that area, clean that up, add some signs, not only stop signs, but vehicular signs, and more importantly, pedestrian signs through that area.
And if there was something significant that you could do through there, would you have to go through the mall owner to get approval for that and maybe work something out? Because we had talked many times about a ring road redesign or changes to the traffic pattern inside. And I think we actually had a plan at one time where somebody had done a sketch about that.
Okay.
And maybe we should look at that again while
We're not going to be able to build a ring road throughout their property, but we could certainly improve current situations that are out there and work with them if they were interested in
Yeah, and
facilitating
there's a lot
that.
of places where you go, you have to make a left or a right and left to get,
Yeah.
and if you
And
could-
there's a lot of openings into the parking
Right.
area in that
Right.
ring road. That's absolutely something we can look at and be in our setting plan. Sure.
And to build a building, do you need to go outside the building pad to build your improvements? Do you need approval from the mall owner for that?
We have an existing easement agreement in place with them, and we're proposing amendments to that document that are mutual beneficial for them and for us. For us, we want control of what I call the front parking area, right behind the market there. There's a double row of parking. We'd like to convert that and make that the front yard, so to speak, of this property, and to come in and improve that. We need their consent for that, in exchange for which we're giving them back some things that we have
Okay.
under the agreement. Yeah. But there is an existing cross easement agreement in place. It's been modified a few times, and Rich certainly has a good working relationship with Preet, and is going to work on that, as we progress forward.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank all of you very much. Appreciate you coming.
Good, thanks. I guess just in closing, if generally you're supportive of this, we'd like to continue with the staff, and then when they're comfortable moving forward, to authorize the advertisement of it so that we can have a full hearing, and you can take it under advisement at that point in time as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was an office building. People were coming in and out, and, it seems to me like less traffic than when it was an office building.
So is everybody good with us continuing with township staff to Ken and doing the reviews?
I
and
mean, I am, are you, Kathy, and Lynn, and Nick? Yeah, I am. Yes.
Okay, we'll keep moving forward through Karen with staff, and we get it comfortable. We'll ask that it be advertised and sent to the county, and the county will do a review letter. Then we'll come back for a hearing in which it's a more formal environment, and we'll present all these documents in the form of exhibits.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
also
Okay.
send your latest draft to Ken.
Yep, there it
That's
is.
in here?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks all. I emailed it to you, Karen, too, this packet, so you'll have it by email. You can just forward it on to everybody. Thanks. Yep.
Let me just see something here. Just checking to see if Chris got back to me. Okay. Next, we are going to have a 20 years of service resolution for Andy Moretti. Any takers for that? I'll take that one then. The records disposition resolution, any takers to read that one?
I can do that.
Okay, Kathy. The National Police Week resolution, I'm sorry, I'm moving on, I'm like so fast. Is there anything else from administration, Karen? No. Okay. Police and public safety, we are going to have a National Police Week resolution. Anyone want to read that one? I'll take that one. Nick? Okay. The commendation of merit for the swift action. Lynn will do that one, okay. A unit citation.
I can do that.
Kathy. Our National Public Works Week resolution.
Should we give one to Chris?
I was going to say, when are
Should we
gonna
give
start
one to
giving
Chris?
Let's give Chris the
You're in
next
charge,
third
right?
rate.
Is it Chris?
Okay. Oh, but how about the Highways Materials Bid Award?
definitely Chris.
Definitely Chris, okay. That's a juicy one. Do we have anything else, Chief, on?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And anything else from our Public Works?
Well, we did open bids last Thursday for highway materials, and there's no surprise with the oil prices and the gas prices. It's the most we've ever paid for a ton of material. So thank goodness we have a great relationship with Glasgow. They were $44,000 cheaper than the closest competitor. The bids were $380,000 from Glasgow, which was the low, to the high, which was $466,000. The price per ton was $91.55. To put things in perspective, the most we've ever paid was about $74 a ton. I use $80 a ton, and it's a gauge with gives me a lot of wiggle room for a budget, and we're at 91.
Yeah, someone's making
So
money.
what I did is it kind of blew up our budget a little bit, and our budget was $300,000. So I looked at the numbers and I reworked some other roads, and so I was going to offer this proposal to kind of stay within our budget to do this, and it doesn't make sense to spend $91 a ton on roads that could wait till next year. It just, I don't think the oil prices are gonna go higher. I think they're gonna eventually come down. So I was thinking of eliminating Sandwood Road, Pastel Lane, and Hallman Avenue. And because we're staying up on the Jolly Road area with Beacon Hill Circle, Plymouth Rock Road, I also looked at, I wanted to add Timber Fair, I wanted to add Loretta, and I wanted to add Ashwood. If you've driven on those roads, they're falling apart. And it's that red, from the M&M quarry, everywhere you see the red stone, the old timers would say that the asphalt emulsion did not stick to that red stone. And that's why it gets all pitted and it starts to fall apart. So looking at those and making that adjustment, we're actually right around 300,000. And we did receive money from Aqua to restore their area when they did the water main. So we have $34,000 that Aqua gave us.
That's down at Beacon, right?
That is.
And
so
Jolly.
from Jolly Road, Township Line, Beacon Hill,
Yeah.
that was at $30,000. So that kind of gives us that little bit of wiggle room, right around the 300,000 mark and the 30,000 wiggle room should we go over. So I just think it makes more sense, and the other roads can wait till next year. And from a mobilization standpoint, it just makes more sense. We're staying up this end for the most part. If you've been on Sierra Road is a mess. So we are going to full mill that road. That's another red stone project.
And it got all that extra use for
Yeah.
chemicals.
2008 is actually when that was paved. It's relatively recent, and that road is falling apart. Sierra is the worst of that bunch, though. So still would like to do Sierra and Brook Road for a complete overlay from White Path all the way to Colony. But we'll be right at our budget, and I think it just makes better sense. And we're fortunate because we've got a great contractor again.
It's the Keystone building. Okay, anything else? Did you have anything, Rick? All right, engineering,
Nothing tonight.
you want to take over?
Nope, it's all yours. Can't change the horse in mid-race.
Hey, you should see all the stuff we gave you.
Oh,
No one's
yeah.
doing anything.
It's the
meeting.
Chris show.
Okay. Subdivision and land development, we have action Alba family.
The first one is letter F.
Oh, I skipped, I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Yeah,
It's
that's
on all
okay.
caps too, so.
Yeah, so that's Nick, that's Nick's area.
Nick, and then next action is
Alpha,
Alba is,
Nick,
that's Nick, and Plymouth Town 2 is Nick,
correct.
and 107 Ridge Pike is Kathy.
That's
Okay, Kathy. Escrow release for Plymouth Town is Nick.
There's one more.
It is, but,
Oh, who did I, I say Plymouth Town 2, screen buffer request.
It's going to be Mike, but council needs to discuss that for half a second.
Yeah, they want to put a fence instead of trees.
Correct, that is, and the code allows them to do that with your okay, but specifically the code allows it with your okay.
They don't have anyone here tonight. Why don't they want to put in the trees?
Probably space.
I don't know, there was a meeting with the landscape architect and the applicant. I didn't get any information out of the meeting, but it was determined at the end of that meeting that it was okay. That the fence was allowable by code and it was a.
It's allowable, but
If approved by council.
I wasn't.
Well, you know my stance on trees.
Karen's gonna be mad about this at the council. That's what I would have said, but I wasn't at the meeting, so.
Oh, you should have been at the meeting because I
Nobody
gotta
asked
tell
me.
you, a fence does not do what trees do. And the code requires, we have to have council approval because, I mean,
They hear you.
So this is for the project that was already conditionally approved,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
This is, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But this is still, I guess, something they came back with.
Yeah, but they're designing for waiver again.
What time frame? We did the resolution, they had to comply, they sent revised plans and then added in this change.
Yeah.
Yes.
It came about when we were doing the cost estimate for the project, we included in.
Oh, so this is
in-
one of the things that was the delay for the escrow, okay.
Yes.
So
The
is it a
landscaping-
Cheaper to do the fence?
Excuse me?
Is it cheaper for them to do the
I
fence?
don't know. I don't remember.
I mean, it seems to me we need a reason.
Yeah, cheaper's not a reason.
They have to
Yeah.
come, they have to come to
Space.
council,
I think it's usually
right?
space.
The ordinance says they have to come to
Karen's
us.
a good point. It's usually space to fit the vegetation in,
Double
versus
row.
like a fence can go in a very narrow
Right.
spot, and trees take substantially more.
Well, and again,
Especially a buffer, because it's alternating rows of trees, so
Yeah.
that takes even more space than, so it could be that issue. But again, I wasn't.
Karen, do you want them to come in and?
yeah, I'd
ask
like
why
an
they-
explanation because, you know, again, you make a design, you know what the rules require, you know what I'm not yelling at you, but I am.
I'm agreeing with you. My hands are going up like this because I agree. But
A microscopic
if I
explanation
was at the meeting, I
is
would have
not
said, Karen's going to be
sufficient.
mad.
Yeah, I
We learned.
am because.
You learn from the Pam job. Right?
I'm not going to let developers,
That's not gonna happen.
you know, you know how much space you need, you know what the ordinance says, but you want to squeeze more units
Right.
and then get away with asking for our mercy. And I just don't care for that. I'd like them to come in and explain.
No,
Yeah.
they didn't want the apartments in the first place, like all the residents in the area, because that's my area.
That's right.
So if they get misplanned because they wanted more units, tough luck.
Yeah, I think the trees were.
They have to put if you read the letter from Kim, they have to put a fence up because it's on top of a retaining wall. The plan provides for a privacy fence above a proposed retaining wall adjacent to the Traving property. So you have to have a fence there. That's code.
Anything 30 inches or higher.
And
Needs a
then it
fence.
says the plan provides for proposed fence, vinyl privacy fence and landscaping, which may be permitted to meet the screen buffer requirements in lieu of the double staggered row of evergreens, if approved by council.
So could the issue be that the fence is required for code for safety purposes, where
Yeah,
the trees
definitely.
wouldn't be the same?
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to have a fence
You
for
have to have a
retaining
fence.
walls.
That's
That's
Question
a
is,
must.
the question
Was
would be
that-
fence and trees.
Correct.
Or just
Or just a fence.
Or just
fence.
the fence.
They want just fence, not fence and trees.
Did they have the fence in the original plans, or is it like
Yes,
they?
yes,
So-
yes, because the plans call for that, the plan
Bless
calls
you.
for that.
Well,
So
let's just
in the
make them,
original
let's just
plans, they
make
had a
them give
fence
us an
and
explanation
Yeah.
and see if it satisfies the board,
Yes, why?
especially Karen.
And then,
The tree hugger, and Nick.
And Nick.
I just finished reading.
In this case, they're not taking any out, it's just whether they're putting more in.
They come back for a future work session.
It does look like, it looks like they're in the plan, there's double rows of trees.
Yeah, I thought they were in the plan.
They are, maybe they're trying to save money,
took
or
them out.
space.
I thought they were in the plan, and then I thought they were in the plan originally, and then it was decided that they, for whatever reason, because of the fence has to go in for safety, that they couldn't put the trees in.
Well, it's not that they can't.
I'm guessing that's what the sequence of how it went down.
Oh, okay.
I remember back in July and August,
Don't
or
think
whatever
those
it was,
were
when we were having a meeting about it, and they were saying one of the things they wanted, all the residents were saying, fine, put the trees in and bury, so we don't have to see all the apartments.
Right.
Like, that was the main point of half the residents, like, actually saying, fine, do it, it's your property, just keep it out of sight from us.
So we don't have to.
Okay, well, let's have them come in and explain then. I think
it's
they
fair.
owe us that rather than just putting it as an agenda item.
Go with that.
What's that?
You might want to get a further clarification from Kim about how it all went down.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Nick, you may want to mention to a few residents that might be an interesting meeting to attend.
I know a few tomorrow.
Good talk to.
Just
care about-
curious, like, are they under a time constraint where if we didn't pass it this month, and meaning that if they could just send us something before next week, as opposed to having to push them back?
I can ask them.
I don't know, I'm just
No,
saying,
I
like,
don't think they're
but if
ready.
they're not
I
under
don't know
it.
if they're ready to record this plan or not.
They haven't, we're still going back and forth
We
in
haven't done-
comments on
no,
the land development agreement.
So they have some time.
They do, and this is where he wants to use his existing letter of credit, and they're still talking on this one. I could ask if they want to give some kind of a letter for next week, or I could ask them if they want to come in next month. It's up to you. If they're coming in next month, I'll take this off the agenda. If you want a letter, I'm sure they'll provide a letter in the meantime.
Yeah, but a letter doesn't answer questions.
Well, okay, I want to
Yeah,
have
that's
them come in next
kind of
month.
my feeling, and Nick, it's his area, he has his
Yeah, and I guess
constituents
Chris
over
just
there.
mentioned next week, but if you want them to come in, I mean, they could come to the meeting if they were to come next week, then you couldn't act on the resolution that Alice is going to have to write up.
So either way, it would have to,
Maybe another month.
either they come for the workshop.
And then he does the resolution for the next week. 'Cause, I mean, I had that it would need a resolution if granted, and Mike would do it, but.
Yep, it definitely needs a resolution,
Yes.
because we're modifying the prior
Yep,
land development
conditional
approval.
approval, yeah. So next month, I'll just take it off
Okay,
and have them come in.
yeah. Thank you, Karen. Okay, and next we have an escrow release for Plymouth Town.
Yes.
So that's still ready to go. That's Nick.
I wonder if the trees are included in that? We'll have to check.
I believe the trees are not included.
I think they must be because it's down to 0.
Oh, that one, that's
Yes.
the old one.
Yes.
Yeah, that comes out, yeah, that's already.
That one's ready.
Yeah,
So we can
trees
still
aren't
do
part
Yeah,
that
it's not
one.
Plymouth Town 2, it's
No.
regular Plymouth
of
Town.
it. Trees aren't part of that.
Okay, it's the 70 units.
But we have enough for the
30.
basin from that.
Yes.
I'm going to drive Lonnie nuts for this project.
Yeah.
Okay, the maintenance guarantee release for 1960 Linda Drive.
That's Kathy's area. And there's no, so,
Are these the 15% are being reduced to 0 for both of these? Okay.
do you think they need a resolution or not?
No,
Because they
they're-
expire.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that first one would be then for Kathy, and Lynn's would be to Be Amazing, that's the Goddard School on Walton Road. So that, the one that, C, a maintenance guarantee release for Be Amazing is.
So that's Lynn?
Yes. Posted money for their improvements to be in good shape.
So the
Yeah,
18
I did,
months have
I
been
did, you should have letters, I sent.
Yes, they're in the book.
I sent
Yeah.
Dave Conway letters with photos.
Yes.
Okay, code enforcement, do we have anything?
I have nothing.
That's good. The zoning hearings, anyone want to do the announcement of the zoning hearings?
Sure, I'll take
Okay.
Is it Lynn?
We don't have anything else on zoning, just the reading of the hearings. Parks and Recreation, I'll read the... Okay.
Brought some signs too, if anybody's interested in the lawn signs. for
saw
Township
that.
Day. I'll put them over there by the door and pick up the extras tomorrow, so. Want one, they're there.
Okay. Is there anything else for Parks and Recreation, Phil?
No, push Plymouth Township Day, because this is the last meeting before Township Day, so.
Okay.
Phil, I have something for you.
Good, Friday.
So I wanted to bring this up today because I had a voicemail, and if I don't mention it tonight, I'm going to forget about it, and I can't do this to this woman anymore. Barb Thompson has reached out to me a few times, and I know a couple years ago we brought in Ann Schuring, who runs the Hometown Heroes banners, and we talked about if we could do it here, if we wanted to do it here, and we discussed that we don't have street lights, but we did at one point say, hey, maybe like, in the parks or around the community center in the parking lot there, it could be something. And she's really interested in seeing if we can do this. And I think in a small setting where it could maybe be sort of kind of a pilot run and see if it works, it's very easy. People order the banners and they do it all. We just have to get the brackets and put them up. Obviously, advertise that it's available. The only cost for us really is the brackets, but I thought it might be something that could maybe come out of here, and as a Parks and Rec initiative, and I'd certainly be willing to help. I'm sure Barb would be willing. I will volunteer, Barb. But I don't know how many. I know Rick one time I think counted all the light poles around here maybe in both parking lots.
Yeah, I think it's in the high teens. I don't remember exactly, but.
So, and you could put 2 on each, so you're not talking about a ton, but it could be a good measure to see if something like this there's interest in it and people would want to do it. Certainly spruces up the parks, gets people in here walking around, checking them out. So no, I wanted to bring it up and see if there was any interest in something.
I just remember, for everybody's benefit, and believe me, I'm all about honoring hometown heroes. When Ann Shuring came in and gave the presentation, they do it in Lansdale, and it's a very walkable community. The one cost is we don't have a lift truck, so every time you put them up or take them down, we have to rent a lift truck because we don't own one. So the cost should include that too. But in Lansdale, they put them up every spring and they take them down every fall as to preserve them, and she said they get like 2 seasons out of them, but that's up and down, up and down. It's 4 lift trucks and somebody to do that. I don't know if that's our maintenance folks or it's not. But the cost, I think, the charge somebody should include that in the cost. And they also, in Lansdale, they had like 500 of them, but when they took them down, they had to store them flat somewhere. And they're probably, I don't know what size they are, they're probably 2 by 3 feet or something. They're whatever those banners are. We need a place to store them. If we were going to store them here, and like right now, there's like nowhere at the township building to store a thing.
Or we just leave them up all year.
Or you can leave them up and they won't last as long. They'll fade and they'll rip with the wind and the rain and the snow. So,
But that could be part of the thing if they want to get an updated banner.
But there are buildings at the Harriet Wetherell
to the
Park.
person who ordered it. If they wanted to keep it, it could be tattered. It could be worn and faded. It will last longer if you put them up and take them down. That's what Ann told us. That's how they do it in Lansdale. I remember I still have the pamphlet on my desk.
Yeah, and they had a long waiting list too, so they would have, they would take them down so they could put up the next wave of people, the people that ordered them.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would get the same. I don't know. I owe it to Barb to bring it up. I have to.
It was expensive though, right?
Yeah, they're I think they were like 200 or something per banner.
It was expensive. I remember that.
But people paid it. People paid it. And I would certainly say we should include any costs that we have into that overall cost. But I don't know. I wanted to bring it up.
So you
Yeah,
think we'd leave
in
them
terms
up?
of them lasting longer, which is cheaper, replacing the banner or renting the lift truck to put them up and take them down, renting the lift truck?
I mean, the lift truck's a few $100s a day. So I would assume you can get them all down in one day, no problem. So 200, so say $1,000, at least $1,000. That's not labor. That's just the rent of the truck.
You guys afraid of heights?
I did notice in Radnor, they did it as hometown heroes, but it wasn't military, it was teachers and other significant. So that just expanded. It was, there were military, there was I forget who else, just former
Basically,
council people.
If you wanted to honor somebody in hometown, you could buy it.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe you live to be 100 and you get a band or whatever. So that might make it more.
Yeah,
we don't have
I could see that getting a little like.
You have to set some parameters.
Yeah, I like military and law enforcement, fire, I mean, is it limited to military or does it also include fire and police?
Most of the towns just do veterans.
Yeah.
Military?
Armed
Okay.
We could always
Fire
start it as a
police.
veteran pilot with veterans, and if it's maybe need a little bit more, get more interest.
So,
Expand it out
and
to
Phil, we
first
can
responders.
kick it around more via email or whatever. I just wanted to put it out there.
I mean, the community center gets a lot of people just walking this path back here and coming in and out, dropping kids off for their swim meets and.
So I guess they wanted, when Ann was here, the township or the borough would take the orders, right?
Right.
Is that how it would work? And then the people would have to have a photograph that get blown up and put on here, and then put some dates or the service, some in the name and their military branch.
Yeah, we would take the orders. They would
money.
they would take the money and then we would send them, I guess, and they make them and then they send them back to us. Just out there. We can talk more.
I have it with her contact if it hasn't changed. Do you think Ann's still involved? Or
I
you don't know?
think so. I haven't checked in a while, but I think so. That's all.
Okay, anything else for Parks and Recreation? All right, Planning and Development, nothing. Citizen Board vacancy announcements? I'll take that one.
Everything got passed for Joe Salvia. He got his permissions from work, so he's all set
Oh,
for
good,
the
okay.
sewer board.
Yeah, I didn't see him on there, so I figured it came through.
Yeah,
He'd
it
get
did.
back to me.
Yeah, he got permissions, and I just had to verify that, like, we have no connection with the Upper American wastewater treatment plant, and we don't.
Right. Yeah, he didn't think it was going to be a problem, but.
Sounds like we got an excellent person.
Yes.
Yeah, really, I mean, like, my God, it was like made to order.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does.
Yeah.
It's perfect, yeah.
It's his livelihood.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else from any of our department heads, or?
I have
Hey,
one.
Karen, I would say for your neighborhood, for Butler Pike, still getting calls. We're trying to get through there at 7:30 for recycling, because they won't let us through there after 9.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 9 to 3, it's
Yeah.
closed. They reopen again at 3, but that's too late
So
for you guys.
perhaps maybe you can continue to spread the word to anybody.
Get it out there?
Have it out the night before, because we're there, that's the first place we go in the morning. is,
Thank you.
To canvass that whole area, get it all done before 9. So
Okay.
I feel the calls today saying the same, but that's,
Yeah, I'll let the people along there know,
okay.
since I can safely walk Butler Pike now. There is no traffic.
Chris, do you know if they intend to fix that broken guardrail right at that corner where Narcissa comes up the hill and Butler comes around the bend? I don't know if anybody's said anything about that or not.
No.
But there's a footing on the guardrail that's like
Right on the curb.
right on the curb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the
I
people who
assume
try
that-
to make the right.
I assume that if they're working on the road, someone's aware of it, but
I think they're working
No,
in the
people
road,
try.
not on the road.
in the
Then
road.
you see them.
But they're there. I mean, there's I
Well,
don't know.
that's-
Somebody's
that's-
there.
It's a different
That's
It's
the
county.
utility, and
It's
yeah,
utilities.
I got
water
you.
or the gas, it's one of the.
One of the two,
Yeah.
it's probably both.
But that would be a county. Would that be a county responsibility for that? So I don't. Again, no one said anything to me about it, but I see it every morning. So I just when I'm looking for that bear, I look at that guardrail.
Oh, we have to ask permission. We can't come back home without getting permission.
Karen, I
Flagger.
have one other thing I wanted to bring up, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring this up as something to maybe task Alex and Mike with. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's just a thought, and it's been in my head for a while, but it's recently popped up in my head again. So with everything going on with the fire code, and I think back to, this really started coming to my mind with Covanta a couple years ago. And just our knowledge of how difficult it is to get people to run for office. I just wanted to see if Mike's office could take a look at like what the process would be if we ever wanted to try to think about going to at-large seats, 3 1 year to the next year, as opposed to the ward representation. And it just, it's something that I would have to go to a ballot, I think, at some point. But I was just curious if you guys could give us a little bit of information on that
I mean,
process.
everyone
and
would be at large?
all
Everyone.
5 seats.
All 5 seats at large.
And again, I just, I've been doing this now for 6, 7 years, almost. I don't know, it feels like 17. But in a good way,
You're doing such a good job, Chris.
But I just think about the amount of times that we've all fielded phone calls and emails, and there's so many issues that are just township wide, and we're all making decisions on. And I've just always wondered if it's better that we do it the way we do it, or if it would be better that we do it like most townships do, as opposed to like the boroughs that are a little bit more territorial. And I know we're a first class, but we're home rule, so we can kind of do what we want. But I know, to me, it just seems like most municipalities that are laid out like ours don't do it the same way. So it doesn't even need to be anything we really kick around tonight, but I just thought if I could get you guys to kind of look into it.
I can certainly
and
get an
then we
answer
can
on that.
talk about it in more detail when
I think it's such a good
feasible.
idea to have a wider pool of candidates too, to run for office. It won't be so limited in selection, so narrow.
And there's probably pluses and minuses on both sides that we can certainly talk about at some point, but if it's even worth talking about from a legal standpoint. So I just wanted to bring that up, kick that around.
Yeah, we can answer you pretty quickly on that.
Well, as an at-large person, I'm not very territorial.
You bear the brunt for all of us. Anyway, that's all.
It's nice thinking like that. Okay, and nothing else? Then we will, going into executive session, and we will be adjourned.